So
I'll tell
that's
you a
my
really funny story about that. I've never told this publicly, I don't think. So, like,
careful.
around the time like, I remember, like, my first decision to use anabolics, it was, testosterone cypionate, British Dragon testosterone cypionate, which British Dragon was, like, a huge underground lab back in the day that I think later kind of they were busted by the feds or maybe the feds overseas. You never knew where the stuff was getting made, but it was getting shipped here, whatever. It was a British Dragon testosterone, cypionate. And I remember, like, loading the needle up with it and just, like, staring at it and, like, sweating and, like, putting it down and walking away. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Iron Road. I'm Eric Prush, here with my dear friend, co-host, partner in crime, longtime training partner. Trying to think of something really mean to say about him off the top of my head, but I can't do it. Ian DiGiacomo, the Seinfeld to my Kramer. I guess is the best way to put it. The Jeff Daniels to my Jim Carrey. Maybe, although they're both pretty retarded in that movie, so I suppose that's it could work. It could work. You know, either way, no human being gets me to be more organized than Ian, even if he doesn't even understand it. So, Ian, we love you. I'm glad you're here. How are you doing, sir?
I'm doing pretty well. I kind of want to go back for a second and say I'd rather be George Costanza than Jerry Seinfeld because I think that George is one of the greatest characters in TV history. So I'd rather have George Costanza stamped on my jersey instead of instead of Seinfeld personally. But yeah, other than
I
that, I'm
mean,
doing great.
but George is, as you get older, it's actually kind of painful to watch George. Like, I wouldn't just say that to somebody. It's kind of like mean almost, like watching him just like implode his life is so brutal. But he does probably consistently have the funniest subplots. Like, if you were to ask me, like, what are my favorite Seinfeld subplots, the one of him trying to get fired from the Yankees,
Yeah,
that's one of my favorites. The
yeah,
one when he insists to his in-laws that he has racehorses named Snoopy and Prickly Pete, and he like drives them all the way out to the
yeah,
Hamptons where he doesn't even have a house, just in a game of chicken to see if they're like, oh yeah, sure. Because I just remember he puts them in his car, and as he's walking out of the garage, he's like, now remember, once we get in this car, we are going all the way to the Hamptons. And they just let him do it just so
I
he can
like.
embarrass himself.
I like when he closes the car door. He's like, "All right,
Yeah, we're kicking
let's
it up a
go."
notch. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, you know the exact episode I'm talking about.
yeah,
That might
yeah,
be
classic.
the funniest, like his funniest point. Just when he's got his hands on the wheel, we are going all the way to the Hamptons. I'm gonna drive like 2 hours, hoping that you'll just say, "We believe you have the horses," and then we could turn back around. It's just like,
Yeah.
oh my god, oh my god.
Classic,
So,
classic.
Ian, before we started recording, you said that you've been doing a lot of IRL business promotion stuff. And I bring that up because, like, one of the good things about life could also be bad, generally is good, is we all tend to like associate with people who are like us that have the same, a lot of times the same strengths, same hobbies, maybe even same weaknesses to a certain extent. And so, when for a lot of my life, when women around me would complain about men, I would be like, "What are you talking about? Like, all my friends are stand-up dudes. They're all good-looking, fit, smart, like, hardworking guys. Like, what else do you want? Yeah, they're not perfect, but, like, what the hell is your problem? What else could you possibly be looking for?" And then you start working with the general public, and you realize that not everyone is like your friends, right? And then as you get older, you start to really see it. And just a couple weeks ago, maybe about a month ago, yeah, it's about a month and a half ago, there was like back to school night for my daughter. She just started pre-K. So it was my first experience ever going to like a school function. You know what I mean? It was like a Wednesday or Thursday night, something like that. Dude, I went in there and I could not believe just the level of disrepair that these dads had let their bodies fall into. And I don't want to sound crass here, but you know me well enough to know that I'm like a really bad liar. and so I might as well just like say whatever I'm thinking because I there's a reason why I don't play poker. I would lose everything.
No
I'd be
poker
like,
face, yeah.
full house, no way, all in, and like just lose in pretty much immediately, dude. Yes, I'm thinking about, oh man, these guys, they're probably their health isn't looking good. But the first thing I thought, I was like, there's no way your wife wants to have sex with you. There's no way.
Yeah.
And do you blame her for that? I don't know. But like, dude, if you need to be a leader if you're a guy. And if you're walking around looking slovenly, not taking care of yourselves, drinking beers, watching football, playing video games, all of that stuff is not inherently bad
Yeah,
when done in moderation. But if it's all you do and you don't train, you don't take care of yourself, it's like, I'm sorry, but I just feel like your authority as a male figure is greatly reduced. Now, I'm not saying you have to bench 500 or run, a 5 minute mile or something to be respected by your wife or by your community, but you need to take care of yourself. You need to, and God
agreed.
forbid you reach a point where you want to have a conversation with your wife or your children about their level of physical health, how they present themselves to the world. It's going to be awfully hard to do if you look like shit and you're in poor health.
Yeah, I think that luckily for men, women are less shallow on average than men. Women will care more about typically sense of humor, and if you're a nice person, like if you're a
Mhm.
kind man, if you treat them well, if you have kids, how well you treat the kids, like how your interactions with the family, that goes a long way with women as far as like attraction, in my opinion, from my perspective. I haven't really been slovenly, thank God, in
Ever.
my
You've never been.
probably ever. Yeah, I mean, with my heyday of powerlifting, I got a little chunky,
But
but yeah.
here's
So
what's interesting about that is like I think what women like about guys who train, it isn't what we think it is, like, oh, that guy's jacked. I think that they are attracted to the attributes required to look and perform that way. Oh,
that's
like that
fair.
guy's disciplined, he's hardworking, he could accomplish a goal. Because there's a reason why I've especially since I was on gear, I certainly crossed this threshold where like you get so jacked that only freak women and homosexuals find you attractive. But there's a certain
Yeah,
point where you're just like,
it's like
no chick is like,
grotesque for
God, I
most
love how
people.
thick your lats are. Like no
Yeah,
woman that you ever want to date would ever say that. It's not a thing.
yeah,
And so they're not necessarily impressed by, wow, you bench 500. Your woman doesn't care if you bench 3, 4, or 500, but she just respects that you set a goal, you accomplish your goal, and you move forward from there. And like, and there's also a certain degree of like, if you're, especially if you're not getting paid to do it, right? If you're like a bodybuilder, an amateur bodybuilder with no serious aspirations, and if you don't compete, especially, it's like, okay, how into yourself are you really? Because there's no actual take home from this. But the
sure.
reality is, I think it does matter. I do think that you have to represent yourself well. I just think it's important to lead by example. And as I get older, I keep getting all of my training partners are always like, dude, you have to start competing again. And I'm like, why? I don't know if I want to start competing again. They're like, listen, you're 39 years old. Okay. You're going to be in the Masters 2 division. Older guys don't take care of themselves as well as you do.
Got it. So you'll clean up, basically.
It's
It's you're gonna be
you're
smashing
as
people.
fit in some respects as a guy that could be in his 20s, and you're going to go against a dude that probably doesn't lift weights, does jujitsu 3 days a week as his only form of exercise. Even if he's like technically better than you, he can't keep the pace. You're just
True.
gonna you're just gonna bully him. And so when I think about that, I'm like, yeah, I could beat up a couple guys with accounting jobs and get some medals
Yeah,
and say I'm a
yeah.
champion. I could do that. You know what I mean? Beat up Jim from accounting, to rip his leg off and act like I won something special. What's wrong with that?
It's true. That's true. That's a good point. On the other side of the coin of the whole, like, setting a goal and being disciplined to be fit and all that, what happens? Let me ask you a question. What happens if you're a guy who is a really strong business guy and you are building an empire and your business is exploding, but it takes every waking moment and you don't get to eat well and you pack on pounds and you can be very driven and very successful, financially, in your career without having the body to match. I think that's where a lot of people get tunnel vision is they're so driven towards their career that they completely neglect their health. And I'm not saying you have to be also shredded and amazing looking, but
Exactly.
from a health perspective, like many people will say like I want to leave my kids a legacy and that usually means finances. Like I want to leave my kids
Yeah.
some sort of heirloom, right? It's this big trust fund bank account. I want to build this thing so I can leave it to my kids and grandkids. I can guarantee you that your kids and grandkids want more time with you. If you die of a heart attack at 45 because you pushed yourself so damn hard, what's it worth?
Yeah.
What's the millions worth? Now your kids and grandkids are spoiled and they don't know the value of hard work and saving money and budgeting because they have all this
Yeah.
money that was given to them.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of problems with that mentality. Of course, we want our families and generations to come not to want for anything, but I've seen many people inherit money and they have no values. They have dog shit work ethic. It's all downhill from there. So being gifted money like that, like a lottery winner, it doesn't do anything for your character. It's probably detrimental to your character if I had to
Oh, no
really put
question.
a
No,
pin
no
on it.
question. I would imagine it's a tremendous challenge to raise a man of good character if you are insanely wealthy. I always think about one of my favorite football players of all time was a guy he played strong safety for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and later the Denver Broncos. His name was John Lynch. He's in the Hall of Fame and now he's like an elite general manager. The guy is very, very intelligent. And I know that early in his career, he got his balls broken because he came from a very wealthy family. Okay. But it turned out he was like a violent lunatic on the football field and had no problem basically trying to kill you. And so he was able to kind of forge his own identity. But when you're on a team with, a bunch of guys that come from terrible neighborhoods where football was their only way out, right?
Yeah.
Certainly it might be a little bit difficult to relate to them, but dude, I think you raise a great point. And some time ago, I had a consult with the client, older guy, had to have been in his 50s, maybe 60s, American guy that had moved to Europe. And I remember talking to him, and he didn't start having kids till he was like 50 or something. Like he lived his whole
Wow.
life and then started having kids. So he's like maybe 8 or 9 years ahead of us in the child journey. And he was like, "Hey, Eric, how do kids spell love?" I'm like, "I know this is a trick question." I'm like, "Sure, tell me." And he's like, "Time."
Hmm.
And that really stuck with me, you know. Just to get like really personal here, like my father, and I'm sure this is I mean, we're the same age, right? So like our parents, similar generation, similar things. My grandparents were, out of the Great Depression, and were not big spenders. My father and his siblings did not go on like a lot of nice vacations, and I think my dad kind of became like possessed with the idea that I'm going to take my kids to Mexico or the Bahamas or or all of these places, and as such, he wasn't around ever. You know, and what's so weird is to your point, like I've heard a lot of professional wrestlers talk about this, where like they're out of the house so much that when they are home, your family builds a routine that you're actually not involved in.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
like they have a sense of humor, even, right? Like, I know how I can talk to mom and mom won't get upset. I know what my tasks are. I know what I'm supposed to do. And now you add another human into it, and everyone's like, wait, what do we do? Like, who's going to do these chores? Or like, dad is getting upset at me for talking to mom the way I always talk to mom, but mom never said, and all of a sudden you wind up having these issues. And I can
Yeah.
tell you, as a kid, that was a big problem for me. It's like my dad wasn't around. We would go on these long vacations, and it was like, okay, now we're a family of four instead of a family of three. I don't know how to act.
Hmm.
I don't know what's gonna piss this guy off or what's not gonna piss him off. And certainly, all people have different limits. A lot of times my dad would get upset about something, and I'm like, I this is how I always am. You're just not around to see it. So if this is a bad thing, I wish that you would have told me. Or if it bothered, you know what I mean? Weird stuff like that. That obsession with I'm gonna get these nice things for my kids. I think it definitely affected like our family's relationship. And so I totally agree with you. And on the concept of love being spelled Time, again, you and I, even in our 30s and 40s, are still pretty extreme when it comes to training in terms of how seriously we take it. and everything relative to most guys our age. And I don't, so I always have like some record I'm chasing. Like right now, I want to get my VO. I have a chart of the VO2 maxes for MMA fighters, and it's got like poor all the way to elite. And I want to get my VO2 max up to the elite VO2 max for a light heavyweight. Okay.
Okay.
It's going to take a
Okay.
lot of work. It's not going to be an
Yeah.
overnight process. It's going to take a lot of work. And truthfully, I might not even be able to do it. Like if I'm still carrying too much weight, I might have to shoot for 185. You know what I mean? It might be a different
Fair.
a
Fair
different
enough.
number, because there's a lot of genetic components behind that. But the point is, like, I don't expect most guys to think that way. You know what I mean? To organize their training in such a way. And it doesn't make you less of a man or like a pussy or something if you don't get fired up to go train. But you do have to take care of yourself. And I do think you have to have something in life that does fire you up, right? If it is your business, great. If it's just everything about your kids, awesome. Could there be anything better than that? But there's just no reason to ever let yourself go, because I also think that it's pretty rare, unless someone's got a lot of money, uh, to have see a fit, attractive, happy wife and a fat, slovenly husband. She's either not going to be with you or you're going to drag her down with you, right?
Yeah.
Uh, and so it is important to set that example. Like one of the things that my parents did really well was they never forced me to train ever. But they both loved to train. My mom was more of an endurance person. Okay. She loved cycling and all that stuff. And my dad loved to lift, and the equipment was in the house. I would see them come home from work and exercise. And so I saw it, I saw it, I saw it. And then about when I was 14 or 15 years old, I decided I wanted to join the Navy and try to get accepted into the U.S. Naval Academy. And I wasn't playing sports at the time. And I was like, I got to start working out. And the second, I expressed that interest, they're like, okay, let's go. And they were fully supportive of it, but they didn't
Hmm.
force me to do it. I was able to find my own motivation, my own purpose to get to that point. And then they were able to kind of really feed the fire, which I'm very grateful for. And I never probably would have been interested in training, particularly because I was doing more endurance stuff at the time, if I didn't see my mom or dad doing it. Because all of the heroes we looked up to were Rambo, like physique guys, not
Yeah.
not not
Yeah.
so much like endurance or anything like that. That just wasn't the era. Professional wrestling, we didn't grow up in that era, to the extent there ever was one, right? Although I do want to discuss a great Hollywood physique that we should perhaps look to emulate as we get older, but we'll get to that later on in the show. But I think it's important to do those things in front of your kids, to make it fun, to show that it's a normal thing to do, so that for them it's not a foreign experience when you're like, all right, you're 14, time to start lifting. You're like, what the fuck is this? I don't even
Yeah.
know what a weight room is. Like, what's going on here?
Yeah, I'm a huge proponent of being, leading by example with your children. Like they're gonna just absorb your habits for better or
Yes.
for worse. The good ones, the bad ones. So you have to be very self-aware of what you're doing in front of your kids, how you speak in front of your kids, how you speak to your significant other in front of your kids. Like all these things, you're just putting down layers of personality on these beings that you don't even realize. You don't realize they're absorbing it. But I noticed my son just listening and absorbing everything. And whether you think it's having an effect or sinking in, or he's too young, he's not making memories.
Nope.
This is all layering his personality. This is all starting to become ingrained in what he thinks, how he thinks, what he thinks is appropriate, what he thinks is right and wrong. So you got to be super careful with how you act. Not careful, but just aware. And if you're generally a good person, you don't have much to worry about, right? So
Yeah.
if you're deranged, then your kids are going to have a rough time, and they really have to
Mm,
suss out whether their parents are going to be their role models. Because some people recognize from a young age that their parents aren't their role models.
yep.
And their parents are their parents. That's who they are. They accept them for who they are. But not every parent is a role model, so they have to look elsewhere. Maybe they look to an action hero, a movie star when they're really young, and then as they get older, maybe an athlete. They start looking to these people who have who are well spoken, who have good morals and values, who are hardworking. And you kind of start to, hopefully, through good peers and good circles of friends, you gear towards better people and you make yourself better. And the company you keep really matters. The company you keep will sculpt you throughout your entire life and craft your
It's
personality.
the only
And
reason why I'm not dead or on drugs. Was because training helped shape my identity, which helped me get into be around people who were into training. And no matter how insane we all got, the next workout always mattered. So it was like, all right, well, I'm actually not going to go do drugs and drink and sleep with women until 4 in the morning because I have to squat tomorrow, and I have a meet coming up. And even if it wasn't the best reason to not do those things, it does still keep it from getting its hooks in you, right?
Yeah.
And like sometimes, even if you don't have the best moral standards, the best moral reason to resist a vice, just simply not doing it is important because it keeps you from rationalizing it and letting that addiction really sink into you and cause like long-term problems. So I think you're totally correct. And I want to talk a lot about training and identity. And it's kind of a good segue. But before we do that, I wanted to ask you a question about this. So it was just Halloween, right? Like 4 or 5 days ago. We
Yeah.
both have, young kids. So now Halloween is back to being a big deal. I haven't cared about Halloween since I was 11 years old. And now at 39, suddenly, like, this is a huge deal. And so my wife is big into decorating the house and all this stuff. And generally around this time of year now, I do start to like, I enjoy watching scary movies, and it's a shame because my wife hates them, so I have no horror movie partner. I'm always watching them solo. Like I feel like you need a bro. Like my buddy Matt, who moved to New Hampshire, he was like my horror movie bro. Like we would find one to be like, yo, we're gonna watch this one together. It's gonna be sick. And sometimes it wasn't. Sometimes it was really bad. Other times it was really good. But I love to watch horror movies in this time of the year. And of course, Halloween, you're thinking of the Halloween movies, classic, to a certain extent overdone. It's one of those franchises that simply won't die, right? But I think like all men, I have this tendency to like think of really sick stuff and then like debate it in my own brain or with my friends. So I'm watching Halloween and I'm like, who am I more terrified of? And who is the more impressive killer? Is it Michael Myers or Jason Voorhees?
So I have a lot more experience watching Jason Voorhees than Michael Myers, but I would say that their styles are very similar. It's kind of like slowly lurching towards you for the most part, isn't it? I mean, Michael Myers, correct me if I'm wrong, it's not, he's a human, right? He's not undead or he's not like a zombie,
It
essentially.
gets questionable in the later Halloween
What's
movies when
the,
they're just like
yeah.
desperately flailing, trying to create some justification why gunshots don't kill this person. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Whereas like Jason Voorhees, like, oh, he's a zombie. Like we get it.
He's an
Like it just
undead.
makes
Yeah.
perfect sense.
I think the undead thing scares me more because it's, you know, there's really no way to stop him. Whereas if it's just a mental patient who's escaped, yeah, that's terrifying. And that's closer to reality. So if you're a viewer, maybe closer to reality hits home with you and scares you more. And if that's what you're going for. But if I was going to be a possible victim or like a person on the run in one of these movies, I'd want Michael Myers so I can at least, I know he's mortal and kill the guy.
Dude, Jason Voorhees could like almost teleport. You watch some of these movies, like he
Yeah.
just appears. Later in the Halloween films, they, especially in the Rob Zombie ones, which are awful. Okay. They made him much more bigger and like hulking. But the
Okay.
earlier Michael Myers was like an athletic 20 something man. He's climbing stuff, he's doing athletic stuff. Whereas Jason Voorhees was always really big,
Yeah.
really, really big. So I felt like his capacity to wield destructive, like stabbing devices and blunt force objects was just incredible. Like he could chuck an axe and just like like a considerable distance and kind of take you out. And he has my all-time favorite uh kill in a movie, and I'm not usually someone who like fetishizes this, but in one of the Friday the 13th movies, there's a scene where there's a person in a wheelchair and they're going up the wheelchair ramp like outside of a log cabin, and Jason Voorhees just appears and like cuts their head off, and the wheelchair rolls like all the way down and flips backwards, and it's just perfect. Like it's just absolutely perfect. And like if you haven't seen this, honestly, I'm going to tell you, you have to save it for when you and I can hang out because I
All right.
insist on watching this with you. But the Friday the 13th remake from about 10 or 12 years ago, really worth watching.
I don't think so. I think I saw a lot of the Freddy vs. Jason when they were coming out because that was just
Dude,
interesting to me.
Freddy vs.
I mean,
Jason is a classic.
they're really more comedies than horror movies,
For
though.
sure.
It's just
For
like
sure.
good clean fun essentially. But but yeah, it was cool to see that whole merge. But it's like Alien versus Predator. Either it's going to be a great or terrible. It's like you can't bring these two like horror or thriller titans together without it being a massive flop or without it being like a home run.
Well,
So it's going to be one
they
or the other.
deliberately made it stupid, and so they got around a lot of,
Fair.
it was never going to
Yeah.
be like a classic. And the thing is, the Halloween movies, the better ones, are like legitimately good scary movies. I mean, John Carpenter is a great director, right?
Yeah.
Friday the 13th was always ridiculous. And if you go back and look at the heyday of those movies, bro, they were cranking out like one a year for like the entirety of the 1980s.
Yeah.
You're not keeping up a reasonable pace here. You're just getting a bunch of no-name guys that aren't even in the Actors Guild yet, so you don't have to pay them health insurance. Okay, letting a 6'8" man cut them up on screen and just pushing it out, and that's what you're doing. But I just, as I'm watching it, I'm like, you know what? If I was forced to run for my life, I think I would choose Michael Myers. The only exception to that might just be like, it seems to be, if you just don't go near Camp Crystal Lake, you don't die. Right? It
Fair
seems
enough.
to, like, just don't go there. Right? Like,
Yeah.
where Michael Myers, like,
Yeah.
he seems to get out and travel. He could wind up in some
Yeah.
different
It'd come to
places.
you.
Whereas, like,
Yeah.
with Jason, it's just like, why is anyone going to this camp? Like, 6 people got beheaded last year. Like, this is, it's over. Just make it a national park. Just fence it in. It's over. Okay? Like, there's no reason. There's no way to ever do it. But when you look at Michael Myers being like an actual mortal, you're like, okay, this guy's got to be an incredible athlete. Like, there's no question. Like, in the first movie, he just like jumps on the hood of a car, steals a car, even though he's been locked up in like psychiatric care, conceivably has no idea how to drive, but manages to steal a car and drive it all the way back to where he's from with no maps, no GPS of any kind, and then just start going on, like, is able to find his old house and just start jacking people up. But you look at it, you're like, if you were gonna train for this, like, if you were like, I'm gonna go on a stabbing spree like Michael Myers, like, I don't think you could be too big. I think you'd have to do a lot of cardio.
Okay.
Okay, you'd have to do a lot of cardio. It would take like, you'd have to do a lot of like jumps, a lot of like plyometrics.
Uh,
You have to be able to clear things pretty quickly. Okay, there are numerous scenes in Halloween where he's like, it's actually kind of impressive, frankly. Whoever did it, he's like lowering himself down from like a balcony with one hand. Like, I couldn't do that, dude. Like,
no.
and you got to figure, if you're over 2 bills, that might even be impossible depending on the person. You know what I mean? Like, it's very
Well,
challenging. That's
to that
some
point, the eccentric's going to be a little easier than the. So if he was doing, if he pulled himself up with one hand,
Yes, yes.
that'd be
Yeah, yeah,
crazy.
yeah, I
Maybe he
agree.
has enough to muster, to lower himself a little bit with.
That's a good point. Excellent training wisdom applied to Halloween H2O. But, like, he's lowering himself down and he just starts stabbing people. I think you'd have to do a lot of cardio. You'd have to, like, a lot of conditioning work. You need to do a lot of sprints to close the distance, because if you're going out there and you're jacking people up, like, you got to figure surprise, you need surprise. So you can't have people getting away. Like, you have to close the distance pretty quickly. And,
Sure,
and I,
sure.
I don't think you could be too big, because he's sneaking through houses. You can't be heavy footed. You know what I mean? You
It's
got you
true. You have to
you
be
got you got to
nimble.
be light footed, okay? And you got to have. You wonder how much gear he's carrying with him. Probably just one knife. That seems to usually be his go-to. So it's not like he's rucking or something where he's carrying a bunch of stuff with him. Where Jason would always have like a big axe or like a fence
The
pole, like
machete.
something
The
like
machete, right?
huge. Yeah,
Yeah.
something just massive. Okay, where Michael Myers is always like, I break into a house, I steal a butcher knife, and it's fucking game on, basically. But
So does he not come into the house armed? Does he find whatever he finds in the house? Is that his gig? Also, the painter's costume looks very comfy, and for his mobility and it's very
great point.
flowy,
That's a
right?
great
So
point. That's a great point.
He's
Yes,
not restricted by his
it's also very
his
unassuming.
wardrobe.
Depending on where you are. Although, when you've killed enough people in the painter's costume, I imagine you start looking over your shoulder a little more. Late October, when you see a guy in a painter's costume, you're like, yeah, I don't know about this one, but I first of all, I mean, I agree. It's unassuming. He definitely has really good mobility. And like, again, we spoke about this regarding Batman. I mean, like, conceivably, if you were going to, like, to train for this, I think you need to take like, I still maintain like testosterone, growth hormone, that's your base. He's going to need EPO for stamina, just like Batman. Okay. But I think this is, but I probably should have said this with the Batman steroid stack or the Batman PED stack. I think he's got to be on Toradol and cortisone.
What? But what I don't get is he chasing Usain Bolt? Like, why does he have to be on these drugs? He's probably
Because,
chasing
okay,
like
so hear me
average,
out.
like the dads you mentioned earlier. He's probably chasing people who are already out of shape, who don't know how to fight, who, also, question for you in this scenario. What's the skill set? Is it more of like a hunter in the woods, or does he have to have some kind of martial arts background? Does he need to know Krav Maga for some like, or some Aikido maybe? Like, is there any rhyme or reason why he should be trained, in the mental institution?
probably, he's probably was
Is
a
he
good high
doing
school
Muay
wrestler.
Thai?
Probably a good high school wrestler. He understands basic distance
So he's a
management.
grappler.
Okay.
Okay.
Like I think you have to be able, probably some judo. You have to be able to get a hold of someone's clothes and manipulate them. I think that's a
Okay.
huge thing, like collar sleeve control, like some way that you can grab their belt. I mean, these are all things that you would learn from judo or jujitsu, like some ability to use the person's clothes. He's not killing dudes on the beach. Jason's killing people like on a lake. They're wearing less clothes. He's always killing at least one chick in a bikini.
True.
With Michael Myers, he's always in a cold area in the Midwest, generally speaking, right? So, like, with the exception of Halloween H2O, which for some reason takes place in California, I think. So, like,
But he
he's
wouldn't
he's
be a
gonna
no gi. He wouldn't train no gi. He'd train
no,
with
no, you
gi,
gotta be,
right? So
it's
he
all gi,
all the
100%.
fabric.
You have to be able to manipulate the fabric. And like, because honestly, there's a great video of John Danaher teaching self-defense where him and his uke are wearing hockey jerseys. And he's showing you how to use someone's shirt to basically beat them to death. Like how to tilt them off balance and punch and then tilt them off, but like really like nasty shit that would like really
Yeah.
really work. So like I do definitely think that Michael Myers, you'd want to have like a judo or jujitsu background. Okay, I think basic enough striking, but the reality is if you have a knife and you're able to get close, you're not really going to be punching people. You're just going to be stabbing. So I think it's more of a grab and stab as
Grab
opposed
and
to
stab.
grab and stab. There's ground and pound and there's grab and stab. Uh,
And is there like, does you think he's practicing in the institution before he breaks free? Is it like thrust, like a fencer, like, like
He's
what
got
type
great
of
instincts.
techniques?
I think most of it's self-taught. I think most of it's self-taught.
It's
Uh,
empirical evidence,
yeah,
empirical
it's
experience.
he's not watching Dr. Mike videos for sure. Most of it's self-taught. Okay, and he's learning like he has his own techniques, like no question about it. Uh, but yeah, I mean it. The guy, whoever plays him in these movies, is generally actually like pretty athletic.
Okay.
Uh, they probably have good navigation skills, like good orienteering. Like they understand like architecture on a basic level, like where the choke points are in a building. Like he always seems to know where there's like a vent or like like a an area where like a driveway everyone has to come in and out of. Like generally he's going to arrive
The
at one of these
bottleneck.
at what thank you. I was struggling right there. Okay.
Yeah.
He
Yeah.
understands bottlenecks, he understands all of these things. But the reason why I brought up that Michael Myers, it's not so much about the testosterone or the growth hormone, because he's only doing this one night a year. Right. So like so
Okay.
Batman, he's got to recover.
True.
Okay.
True.
So it's
Yeah.
a different thing. If you're Michael Myers, you're peaking for one day a year. Okay. You fight basically one day a year. Okay. So he's gonna be really hopped up on Toradol, cortisone, and some sort of stimulant because Toradol
Like a
is
methamphetamine.
the injectable painkiller that they give football players before games. So you could just like
Isn't it like it's like massive Tylenol in injection form,
yes,
right? For the most
yes.
part, it's like that's the kind of the
Yes.
cousin.
So you could just get like your shoulder dislocated and like not feel it until like the shit
Got
wears
it.
off, right?
Yeah.
And then cortisone because he doesn't want to feel the muscle burning. You know, like you want to numb yourself out. Like the point for where if you numb yourself out enough with cortisone, the point where you have to push, where you're like in pain, is much higher metabolically, right? It's why cyclists
Hmm.
always used it, where it's like I don't feel even pain until I get to like 175 BPM or something, which is crazy,
Hmm.
right? Because someone might feel like shit at 155, right? So, like, just that ability to numb yourself out, you could put out so much more wattage or force. So, if it was Michael Myers, you'd say Toradol, cortisone, and he's on like massive uppers. like massive, like like Adderall or whatever stronger than Adderall. Okay, like I've never taken PCP and I never will. Okay, but if what they say about PCP is true, assuming you can maintain some respectable cognitive function while on it,
Yeah.
I'd go so far as to say he's taking PCP just so he feels nothing. Nothing. Just
Yeah.
has like superhuman, like ridiculous drug strength. Okay. And then you got to figure the recovery period from something like this, he's not moving for like a month. A month.
Well, now, from an application standpoint, correct me if I'm wrong, but I've never seen or heard of cortisone being used systemically.
Mhm.
Is that a different? So I've always heard of it from like a site injection standpoint. So you get it
They
injected,
will, from what I
something
understand with
is
cycling,
inflamed
they'll inject it intramuscularly, like in the legs.
in the legs. Okay.
All right.
Okay.
And it just numbs you out. Like it's just Tyler Hamilton, who was a one of Lance Armstrong's teammates and later, had a huge feud with him, mentioned specifically that that was the one drug that he felt when they added it made a huge difference because he could just push so much harder.
Okay.
Like again, dude, think about it. Like if I challenge you to a race and one of us just doesn't feel pain in their legs for, a significant period of time, that's a massive advantage.
Oh
Massive.
yeah, absolutely,
Yeah,
absolutely,
like
especially in endurance sports.
yeah,
Now, again, you're more well versed with the Halloween series. Mike, how long is he running for? How much you know lactate does he have to, to withstand before
a
he gets
lot.
to his victim?
I
A
mean,
lot,
a lot. I
really.
mean, here's what I would say. You don't see him running generally in the movies, but if you account for like the distance he's traveled in one day, presumably on foot, it's a lot of low to medium intensity stuff,
Hmm.
right? So it's like he's all over the place. Like it's similarly like someone did like a map of the run from Rocky 2, and
Okay.
they went to all of the landmarks, and the run is like 25 miles. Like he did not run this round. Like he'd have to, like, to hit all of these, it's just completely impossible, right? So of course, if you look at where he would be traveling in any of these given areas, it's entirely possible, that like the town is, they're showing you a small amount of it, and they don't think the town is necessarily that big, but in general he's going to be all over the place in one day, kind of moving from spot to spot. Okay, but I
Yeah.
think most importantly it's the painkillers, it's the stimulants, because you can't sleep, you can't rest, you got a day, you send
You
it.
got you got to have a day. You got to
Yeah.
have a day.
Exactly. You got to have a day, baby. And you got to just fully send it. But I would say in general, even though the movies are dumber, the concept of running into Jason Voorhees is like more terrifying. Just
Yeah.
because of the physical size, the teleportation. He's obviously a zombie. Michael Myers, you could convince me that he survived a couple gunshots or didn't feel them because he was so methed out of his brain, right?
Fair
Because he
enough.
was just
Yeah.
like gone on drugs. But then when it wears off, like he's in deep shit, right? Where with Jason, dude, there's a scene, I don't want to ruin it for you, in in the remake, where he like ambushes these two guys in a tool shed, right? And one of them tries to run away, and he throws a chainsaw like an Olympic hammer, okay, like 40 yards, okay, like just throws it, and it just cuts this dude right in half. And I looked at it, I'm like, that's a damn near Olympic caliber. I mean, it's an awkward implement to throw it
Yeah.
accurately. You got to figure it's full of gas, it's pretty heavy, you know what I mean? And he just like chucks it. I don't remember, it had to be rotationally. I think he took it right arm and threw it. So he didn't even really rotate very much. It was just kind of almost like a sidearm overhand throw. And it just goes end over end and just slices this dude right in half. It's the most impressive chainsaw thing I've ever seen, with American Psycho being right there where he drops it down the stairwell.
Yeah, it's a classic scene. I
Yeah.
mean,
Yeah.
what a great
Now,
movie.
I want to talk about something a little more serious. I had to
All
bring this
right.
up to you. All right.
Switch gears. Go
I
for it.
was thinking about, training, like, of course, as always. And we've had a lot of discussions here about, like, Ronnie Coleman style of training, Dorian Yates style of training, Jay Cutler style of training, and like what's better, and you will always push back on me when I'm like, go fucking heavy. You're like, that's great, but Jay Cutler's the only guy that could still train. Still in great, still looks great, Jay Cutler, if
Sure.
he wanted to, probably could make like a Masters Olympia comeback and not have injuries be a restricting factor. Like that's how good a shape he's still in.
Yeah.
But it got me thinking about, okay, how do you figure out what works best for you? And you could do weird stuff. You could be like, okay, I'm going to get a muscle biopsy and I'm going to figure out how much of my fibers are fast twitch and I'm going to base it on that. But when I thought about it, I think it was just a matter of ultimately guys are going to choose their training based on their sense of identity, right? Because you choose the sport anyway because of identity. Like some people endurance stuff appeals to them more for whatever reason, and I could get into why, but like they choose to do that. Like I'm gonna get into endurance stuff. It's part of who I am. It appeals to me on some unconscious level. I want to run, I want to bike, or whatever. And of course, if you're good at it, that compounds, and now it becomes part of who you are. But with training, I thought about my lifting and like one of the reasons why I've really struggled to enjoy lifting like I used to is I think that I do get the best results from going heavy and resting long periods of time. Okay. But I hate doing that when I'm training alone.
Hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I thought about when I was at my like biggest, that was how I trained. But because we were in a crew of anywhere from 8 to 12 people, I was never sitting there by myself getting lost in negative thoughts, having my mind drift to other stuff because I squatted. Okay, Ian's got to go. We got to pump the monolift up. We got to load because you never load your own weight, right? You got
Yeah.
we have to load the plates. We got to get him ready for his lift. And so yes, my body is resting and recovering, but I'm almost able to get into this like pseudo meditative state where I'm always focused on the moment. I'm in the moment. My brain isn't leaving training and going somewhere else. And I've struggled sometimes with clients who I tell them, listen, do a heavy set of 6 to 8, rest 2 to 3 minutes. I'm telling you it's going to work. But they have trouble getting into a flow state with training because they do the set and then they're out of it. They do the set and then
Yeah.
they're out of it. Where someone like Jay Cutler, you listen to them talk about this, would rest no longer than 60 seconds between sets. Now, this is a guy that probably weighed 300 pounds, which is crazy.
Outrageous.
Okay.
Yeah.
Crazy. Okay. And yeah, maybe he could have been a little bigger or moved heavier weight. I mean, again, that's ridiculous to even say. Like, it fucking matters. The guy's like a 4-time Mr. Olympia.
Yeah.
And by the way, Jay Cutler, I think if it's not for Ronnie Coleman, probably goes down as the greatest bodybuilder of all time.
Yeah.
It's a weird thing to say because you would think, oh, well, like Dorian's got more Mr. Olympias. Most of those years, there's no second after Jay Cutler, right?
That's fair.
It's
That's
entirely
fair.
possible he wins 8 Olympias in a row without Ronnie in the picture, assuming he shows up and obviously does the work. But
Yeah.
he was clearly better than the third place person almost every single year that he did it. Okay. But point is, it allowed him to stay in that zone. You have that fatigue, keeps your adrenaline up. Your brain doesn't come out of the training. And when our training crew kind of broke up and I opened my own gym and I was training alone, I really struggled to mentally enjoy training because I would do a set of squats and rest 3 to 5 minutes. Do a set of squats. And I'm sorry, but like one of the things I love about endurance training that I love about jujitsu is the necessity of being present in the moment. Your brain can't wander. The pain is constant or the necessity for focus is constant. And some people don't want to train any other way, even if it does give them better results.
It's a great point. I mean, I feel like back to the identity thing, some people who aren't really active, let's say we're talking about somebody who's not well trained or doesn't have our history of powerlifting and training for years and years, how do you kind of determine how do you gravitate initially towards what your identity really is? So it's really tough because you gotta, I guess, kind of by trial and error figure out what you like. And, you know, even for people like when you recommend for a client to go, let's say, go heavy, if they're butchering the technique, it's like, ugh, it's almost like rolling the dice. Like it's really hard to get hurt at like 15 to 20 reps, whereas 5 to 8 reps, now we're playing with some real weight that can actually make a difference for your bone structure for better or for worse. Whereas, yeah, if your technique's a little off for 20 reps, it's less risky. There's a little bit more leeway for clients. That's why I tend to keep my clients, especially the ones who are very untrained and very, not skilled at lifting on higher rep ranges because you just have more you have more of a buffer, more leeway for injuries. But it's crazy because so many different approaches work for different people, and I could try the same routine that you're on, and my body might not respond the way yours does.
Yes.
And maybe Ronnie achieved that physique because he went so heavy and the thickness and what all the, maybe it was just his genetics. And no matter how he trained, he could have trained like Jay Cutler and got a better results. We'll never know. But at the end of the day, is what you're willing to do consistently, what you're willing to do with your diet on the back end, because you can't, achieve incredible results like that without a flawless diet. Those guys weren't eating McDonald's. They weren't eating, everything was dialed in, everything was weighed and accounted for. So it's hard to say, but it's fascinating. I think that's why I can never stop thinking about training, is because it fascinates me. This topic, this subject of finding the best routine for you, whether it's something that piques your interest enough to keep you in the game. Like you
Yep.
said, you have to be interested in the journey. If every step of the way is agony and you hate it, you're not going to keep doing it. So for some of my fitness clients, sometimes weightlifting is like something we do just enough. And then they focus their physical activity on sports, on
Yeah.
things that they like to do, on things they're motivated to do. So it really depends on the person. I'm lucky to happen to love the lifting. I just love the process and approach. But you're right. There's something about the culture of a gym and the weights clanging that aren't yours that just the sounds, the smells, the environment. It really breathes life into you. And having a training crew like that in a perfect world, I would still love that to have some, not even like a hardcore powerlifting train, but have you and some of the other guys that we knew train together on a regular basis. I think our results would be much, much better than they are now,
Mhm.
just by way of the contagious intensity that we can drum up and the environment that we can create. So environment plays a massive, massive role in that success. It's
I've come to realize about myself, for better or worse, I have a very busy mind, you know, and that can be good and bad. It could foster a lot of exploration. I want to do something new. I want to try something new. I want to, learn about something. And I think that's one of the things that's helped me to become somewhat knowledgeable about a lot of topics is I'm like, all right, I know that. Let's move on to the next thing. You know what I mean? But of course,
yeah,
that could be detrimental, especially in athletics, but especially depending on the sport. And I think if I didn't l- leave to open my own business and stuck with that same training crew, I don't know that I ever would have quit powerlifting because every workout was so different and so fun with all these different kind of characters. But the
yeah,
truth is powerlifting, weightlifting, track and field are very monotonous sports from a training perspective, right? You find yourself doing the same thing. It's a very predictable sport, and as such the training becomes very predictable. Whereas I think I was always meant to settle on martial arts because even though there is drilling, there is situational training. You do put yourself in the same positions over and over again to improve on a specific area that you might have a weakness in. There's still always something uniquely different about the person you're doing it with. You might be more tired that day and be forced to be a little more technical. You might be feeling great that day and feel okay with like pushing a little bit more and exerting a little more energy and things like that. And I think that approach fit my brain better. I longer I am away from it, the more I realize that powerlifting was so much fun because there was a team component to it to me. And I found myself really starting to dislike the workouts when I was lifting for 2 or 3 hours by myself. When I had a crew of guys in between sets, we're talking shit or we're getting into fist fights
yeah.
or you're loading, unloading plates or you're answering questions about stuff or you're wrapping someone's knees. It made something that's actually a very sluggish sport in nature become something very high strung and energetic. And those are the things that I do ultimately find attractive about a lot of sports in that way. And it's a weird thing. Like if I still had a team of guys, who knows, man? I might have pulled 800. I might have stayed in the game longer. I mean, who knows what would have happened? But I think it was part of the reason why I was willing to let it go wasn't just because, I was kind of tired of the drugs and I was concerned about the effects that it would have on my health. Certainly, I was concerned with the effects that uh, steroids and my mental health would have on my relationship with my now wife. So those things all kind of came into play. But when you're enjoying something, you're oftentimes willing to sacrifice quite a bit, even your health. Like when I was taking Tren, I think about this all the time. Like I think about all of the toxic stuff that compound made me and all of my training partners do. And you explain it to someone who doesn't get it, and they're like, "Oh, let me get this straight. So you couldn't sleep through the night. Like back when I was taking that stuff, like I literally had to develop a system where I would wake up after a couple hours. I had sweat through my comforter and all of my sheets. Okay. I would rip all of that off the bed, obviously take all my clothes off. This is like, 2 o'clock in the morning, whatever. Put all of it in the washing machine. This is every night. Okay. Turn the washing machine on, towel my body off. Now get on my raw ass mattress with a sleeping bag. Okay, sleep in the sleeping bag for the rest of the night, wake up having sweat through the sleeping bag. Then, before I left for work, take the shit out of the washer, put it in the dryer, put the sleeping bag in the washing machine, do it every night for 2 months. Okay.
That's crazy.
Like your urine is like this weird orange color no matter how much water you drink. It's always this weird orange brown color. You can chug water, your urine will never be a normal clear yellow. It's like there's something going on with your kidneys. You're like, what the hell's going on? You're having these dreams where like you're either being stabbed or beaten to death, or you are stabbing other people to death and beating them to death, like totally out of control. You wake, it's like so real. And you combine that with the sweat, right? So you wake up covered in sweat and you're just happy to be alive or not in prison. You're like, I just killed somebody. But like, what do you mean? I'm in my bed? Oh, okay. Um, like the way that I would describe it, I'm sure I've said this to you before, is like, and I'm going somewhere with this, but the way that I would describe being on trend, especially the way that we took it, is like you inject yourself, and it's like you get in a car on an open road, right? It's a beautiful sunny day. You roll the windows down, you turn on the radio, and it's like the perfect fast driving song. It's like Thunder Kiss 65 or
Oh,
some
great one.
great heavy metal driving song. And you're like, yes, and you just let's go. And you just put your foot down, open road. And that song goes off, and without any input of yours, the next song that comes on is equally as awesome. And then the next song is awesome. And the next song is awesome. But now at this point, you've been driving for 45 minutes and you have a 7 hour trip ahead of you. And you're like, I got to calm down. I've got a long trip ahead of you, but you can't calm down. You can't. Okay.
It's a
You're
great
just like,
analogy.
now you desperately want to calm down and you can't roll the windows up and turn on a podcast. You can't. Okay. Because you're so strung out. Like it's such a
Yeah.
powerful nervous system stimulant. It's why you can't sleep. And it's why it makes you so strong. Cause like your nervous system is so jacked up. And I bring all that up to point out that I didn't care about any of that because I cared about lifting so much that I was willing to put up with all that nonsense. Okay. Once I no longer had like the crew of guys that I'm coming in and I'm like trying to shit on, like, yeah, my deadlift is now 50 pounds more than you. Like, go kill yourself. Like behaving that way. Once there was no audience for it, once like I cared just a little bit less, all of a sudden the side effects and the other things that were going on became a lot for me to bear, you know.
I
And
can only
like
imagine.
I remember when I first started dating my wife, I want to say about 2 or 3 weeks into the relationship, I began training for what turned out to be like my last meet. And I went on Tren. And I remember being scared. I'm like, okay, I know this is a good woman. I've known her for, at that point in time, like 20 years. Like we were from the same town, right? Sometimes you have a rocky situation with a woman and you're like, this might be a red flag. See you later. Right. Especially as a young guy, you don't understand what's worth working
Yeah.
through, what's not worth working through.
Sure.
Right. And, but I knew that she wasn't, that she was a great woman. And it felt like I was white knuckling my way through that entire 6, 8 week cycle, like the paranoia, like I knew that she was never gonna, cheat on me, but here I am freaking out that she's going out and I'm not there or something, right? And oftentimes by my own decision because I'm getting ready for a meet and I'm not gonna go out and drink, right? That's not what I'm gonna do. And by the end of it, I was like, I felt like I barely survived it, and there was just no way I felt like mentally I could handle the side effects. And I've heard guys say that they felt like Tren makes them colder, like much more dispassionate about people around them for better or worse. I don't know if that was the case with me. I just think I was so aggressive, and it made me so confident, but then also weirdly paranoid. It like amplified both sides of my personality. I think
Yeah.
testosterone sometimes just amplifies the confidence, assuming that you have the estrogen side effects under control, and of course the dosing is correct and all that other stuff. Whereas like tren, it made me 1,000 times more confident and 1,000 times more insecure. And it's wild, dude. It's fucking wild.
The way you describe it, I am surprised there aren't like an epidemic of violent crimes with people on tren, because tren, as you know, with modern media and the internet, it's kind of been glorified. It's like
Yes.
everything was trend, trend, trend for a long time, for a few years. The trend twins, like that, they created a persona based on the drug, So everyone kind of like all the memes and jokes that come out about it, trend, trend. So there's a lot of casual people, like not competitive lifters, not bodybuilders, who are on trend, like just gym goers because they don't know anything better. They don't know it's that bad. The way you describe it, it sounds horrific, and it sounds like people with less self-control would be committing violent crimes. Like the average Joe, irresponsible guy who doesn't know any better and has no idea that this is a normal side effect might just think that's the way his brain is now, and that's just how
Yeah.
you operate.
So I'm
So,
glad you said that. There's a couple things that I think can fly in the face of that, because I think what you just said is a perfectly rational, reasonable thing, an assumption to make about it, right? But no one stays on trend all year long. I've heard some people. There's a famous lifter. I'll tell you his name off the air. I remember talking to him about this, and he told me that he used trend for 6 months, and I was like, "You're out of your mind." Okay, guy's a
straight
multiple
6
time
months.
world record holder. Okay, but that's a long time to use it. So I don't know that your brain has time to adjust to the quote unquote normalcy of being on trend. It's not like testosterone that guys are going to stay on for the rest of their life, right? Like, generally you're going to come off it. And the nature of the compound is such, like, it's not really a great compound for hypertrophy. Okay. It's phenomenal at preventing muscle loss, especially while dieting, which is why bodybuilders use it pre contest. Okay.
Fair.
It's phenomenal at increasing strength with minimal weight gain. Like, I might have gained when I took it 5 to 7 pounds or something. But realistically, I was also increasing testosterone dose. It was mostly glycogen. It wasn't a whole hell of a lot of like mass. Okay. It's not like taking something like Deca, which could really bloat you, or but it's a wetter compound, which might be more anabolic. It's just like pure gas. It's just like you're just lifting more weight. So point is, most guys that are lifting, they want to at some point put on size, and trend is not necessarily conducive to that. Right. Like it's not because it affects your sleep so much. Also, it's really detrimental to putting on size. And chemically, it's just not the best for that. I also think that most people that are into strength sports or into bodybuilding, let's be honest, like they're a little bit more disciplined than most people. So they do, even though they feel these things, they do have some degree of control over the most extreme urges. Like, I definitely had, sure, I would get a violent urge. I never ever gave into it ever. I knew that that was wrong and I didn't do it. I think most of the guys that are abusing it, they tend to be more snippy. They probably drive like an asshole, and for sure they make like irresponsible relationship and sexual decisions. I would say that was probably the most destructive thing that I saw guys do with it. No question. But also, if you're taking trend, especially at that time, like you said, it wasn't as glorified. You were a pre-contest bodybuilder or powerlifter. You probably weren't going out. You were dialing in.
That's fair.
You know what I mean?
That's
Like
fair. That's a good point.
whenever we started using it, it was like I had a date on the calendar. Like, the meet is coming. I never just used it to use it. It was like,
Got it.
all right, and it was
There's
always like,
there's a deadline.
yes, exactly. I'm using it and then I'm coming off, and like that's it. For sure, dude. I'm sure there have been a lot of uh bar fights at various joints on Long Island that we would have wanted to ask how much they benched, as we discussed last
Yeah,
week,
yeah.
that were in some way fueled by a combination of trend and alcohol.
Sure.
But I do think it's not. I, I think there are some safety measures there. I don't know that someone who's that serious about training is capable of making rash decisions in mass. I'm sure there's isolated examples that would put them in prison. You know what I mean? Like, for the rest of their life, like a murder one charge or something, right? And again, especially back then, you took it when you were dialing in. Like, it's
Mm.
where it's time to get ready to compete. Okay. So if you're bodybuilding, your diet is really strict. If you're powerlifting, you're still cleaning up your diet if you're over your weight class, right? You're still trying to maybe lose some easy weight, but the vibe just as much as I do. Like, hey man, like I'm wrapping my knees and putting the straight bar on my back for the first time in 12 weeks. I got to be ready to go. You know what I mean? And so I think the less social interaction you have while you're on it, probably the better.
Better off. Yeah.
You know what I mean? But it's definitely destructive. I wish I had data, meaning blood work and like resting heart rate data from when I was on that stuff. Because I just
Okay.
think about how easily I got out of breath. Like a set of 3, and it feels like I just ran a 400-meter sprint. Like completely gassed. Like I would not be surprised if my resting heart rate was over 90 beats per minute back then.
Wonder why? It's because of the nervous system stimulation? Like, why?
I think that's part of it. I also think it's doing something to your kidneys, probably through the nervous system stimulation. So you tend to have like hydration problems, right? So your blood is probably thicker. You know,
Okay.
I've heard things where like it increases something called, don't ask me about the science of this, people, because I don't know it offhand. Like it increases the prostaglandins in the blood, which can make the blood thicker as well. But for sure, I've never heard of someone maintaining like really good cardiovascular conditioning while on trenbolone. Ever.
Got it.
I mean, I don't think it exists. I mean, maybe there are some freaks out there. Maybe they dosed it in a very, very minuscule under control way where it's less of an issue, because back then, we were taking way too much. This was before Dorian Yates and guys were opening up about how much they took. Dorian Yates famously said he was getting, in retrospect, what was pharmaceutical grade trenbolone. It was something called parabolin. It was made in France, and it came in these ampules, and the ampules were 75.5 milligrams per ampule. Okay. And he said he took, the equivalent of 2 ampules a week for 150 milligrams of tren. Dude, we were taking 700 milligrams.
What? Damn.
Okay. And part of the reason we did that was another famous influencer that I'll tell you about off air told us to. He was like, he came down the train with us, really knowledgeable guy. And he's like, if you decrease the dose of your testosterone and increase the dose of your trenbolone, you'll feel better. So we went from doing like 800 milligrams of testosterone and like 200 to 300 milligrams of trenbolone to the opposite. And we all lost our minds.
Wow.
To
Did you get
all of
better
us, to a
results?
person,
H
lost our
h
minds.
How about, like, strength, performance-wise? Did you get better results that
I
way?
don't remember. I don't,
Mm,
unfortunately, I don't even know. I never threw them out. My training journals from I have all of my training journals going back to high school. I've never thrown a single training journal out ever. Okay. But I don't have that documented with the drug doses. Part of
okay.
that is irresponsibility. The other part of it was that was still the era where it was harder to get. So a lot of times you were taking what you could get, not what you wanted.
Fair enough. What's
Nowadays,
available?
you can get what it's all available to you, right?
Mm,
Where like back then, it was also more common for shit to be fake back then, right? Now there's literal like Yelp websites for steroid dealers, right? Like people make a ton of money brewing and sending steroids everywhere. So if you get a bad reputation, it will totally sink you. Where back then it was super common. Guys would set up a lab, send a bunch of buck shit out, and then just vanish and probably do it again under a different name. You know what I mean? Like there was plenty of times where I got a hold of something and I was like, this is fake. I knew it.
is it less illegal to make now? Like, I mean, obviously, it's still very illegal to make it yourself in a bathtub and sell it to people, but why is it more available now? Like, what's the biggest difference between now
I
and
think,
then as far as availability goes?
first of all, we're post opioid crisis. Everyone knows somebody who, you know, overdosed on opioids, committed
Yeah,
suicide. You know what I mean? I think people were kind of like, okay, well, we're not seeing this with steroids. Yes, I think people are dying from PED abuse, but it's a long-term process, and it's very difficult
sure.
to attribute to PEDs. It's being too big, it's a bad diet, it's irresponsible use of the drug. There's a million things in place. But it was not being prescribed. Doctors are not prescribing tren, and it's with the exception of what I just referenced, parabolin, it's never even been legal to prescribe. Like the trend that guys take is it's either tren acetate or tren enanthate. This is stuff that was designed to give to cattle before they slaughter it. Right. So none of this was like ever designed with like the human mind or like health involved. There's no doubt about that. But I think doctors aren't prescribing tren or harsh anabolics in massive ways. So there's just less trackable deaths. Opioids are objectively worse for you than anabolic steroids. Let's not make any qualms about it. They're objectively worse. And also, this was also like relatively close to the Major League Baseball scandal, the Lance Armstrong thing. There was
Sure.
a big moral uproar over this that I think as time went on, people realized they just didn't care about. Like, it's almost a luxury to be in crazy uproar over steroids in baseball. It means your society's doing pretty fucking well. That's all you
Yeah,
have to
that's the
worry
biggest
about.
problem you have.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, it's like, they say in the Dark Knight Rises, like pretty soon we're going to be chasing down overdue library books. Like, it's kind of the same thing. Like, if you
Hmm.
if you are that if you everything is so under control that that's your main issue, society's doing pretty well. Things are
Yeah.
not doing that well anymore, obviously, as we've discussed. And so as a result, it's like, okay, who do I care about? Do I care about Purdue Pharma legally getting hundreds of thousands, if not millions of Americans hooked on opioids? Or do I care about some dude who's making tren in his kitchen?
So the spotlight has shifted from those
Absolutely.
types of drugs to the opioid epidemic. That makes sense. That makes a lot of
Absolutely.
sense.
And other things
Yeah.
too. I mean, like, we're going to see, I think, problems I think people are going to start to develop or have developed significant psychological issues from like the bizarre amped up strains of weed that have come out over the years. Like, this shit is now like narcotic strength. It's no longer just like something someone grew in their yard. Like, that's another
Sure.
thing that's brewing. And it's those drugs are also, meaning, weed and painkillers, they're lower barrier to entry. Like, most steroids you still have to inject. Not everyone gets over that, dude.
I never could. I
Yeah.
never could. I
Yeah.
just, whenever at doctor's office, I'm better nowadays as I'm older and I keep, have more experience with it. But like when I was younger, especially when I was in the age range where I would have done drugs for performance, even just smelling the alcohol and seeing the needle just made me like faint and like dizzy. I just wasn't cut out for it. It wasn't cut out to be injecting myself. Maybe if I had someone to help me with it and I didn't see what's going on, you know what I'm saying? Like, your buddy in the delt to the ass. But, that was something I couldn't, besides I was being terrified of all the side effects and the long-term side effects and all the things that could have gone wrong. I was just okay rolling the dice with finding out what my natural strength peak was and not going to the dark side, which
Dude.
there's still always a curiosity of what it would have done,
Uh,
but it probably would have been more negative than positive. So
I'll tell
that's
you a
my
really funny story about that. I've never told this publicly, I don't think. So, like,
careful.
around the time, like, I remember, like, my first decision to use anabolics, it was testosterone cypionate, British Dragon testosterone cypionate, which British Dragon was like a huge underground lab back in the day that I think later kind of they were busted by the feds or maybe the feds overseas. You never knew where the stuff was getting made, but it was getting shipped here, whatever. It was a British Dragon testosterone cypionate. And I remember, like, loading the needle up with it and just like staring at it and like sweating and like putting it down and walking away. And then finally like being able to do it. But I would say just a few injections in. At the time, you were told to inject cypionate or enanthate twice a week. Like, the half life is 5 days. So the thinking was like, just as it started to really, taper down, you inject yourself. That is now not the thinking. The thinking is, even with longer esters, you microdose for the most stable blood levels possible. Back then, no one thought that way. Okay.
Okay.
And so I was in the basement of my parents' house where I was like living at the time. And there was most of the basement was finished, but there was one part of the basement that was unfinished, and is where we had like the washer, the dryer, an extra food pantry, and then like there was like a turn around the corner where my dad had all of his tools and the workbench. That's where like the boilers were, typical basement stuff, right? And I would go back there to inject because at the time I was told you had to only inject in your glute, right? So I'm much
Okay.
skinnier at the time, so I had like better thoracic rotation. So I'm like rotating. I'm looking in this full body mirror that we had there, and I'm like trying to find the spot, and I'm injecting myself. And I remember I was using a needle that was way too big, which again was really common back then because No one used insulin needles. They used like much higher gauge needles, which left way more scar tissue. So I load up this harpoon with a bunch of testosterone, and I pull. I'm probably even like naked from the waist down, honestly. And I inject myself in the glute. I aspirate to make sure there's no like I'm not injecting into a vein. Okay, I do the shot and I pull the needle out. Now I'm guessing when I pulled the needle out, I might have like tilted it a little bit, so like it wasn't straight in, straight out. It was like a little tilt. I remember I pulled it out, and I'm like, all right, good, getting better at this. I'm getting better, and I feel like a wet sensation on like my S, and then I feel it on my hamstring, and then I feel it on my calf, and then I feel it on my Achilles tendon. And I look in the mirror and there's blood pouring out of my ass, going all the way down onto the floor. Now the basement is unfinished, but I'm standing on a green like floor mat that my mom had put down. And there's a couple other floor mats that she had put like in front of the washer and dryer so her feet aren't like sitting on the cold concrete. Now, I'm reaching over to find paper towels, and I have now drenched every floor mat with my blood. Okay. Oh, and they're all different colors, green, white, everything. There's blood everywhere, right? So I get some paper towels. I had some alcohol swabs. I was responsible. I clean the area up. I stop the bleeding. But now I look over, and there's blood like all over the floor. It's like, how the hell am I going to explain this? Like this is a problem. But it's late at night, so I'm like, okay, I got time to clean this up. So I take every single mat, okay, I throw it right in the washing machine, okay, and in my brain, I'm like, okay, the easiest way for me to like clean this blood out is I got to put it on like the hottest water wash possible, right? Because that to me, in my mind, makes the most sense. I have no idea. So I dump a bunch of detergent in, put it on like hot water wash. I scrub all the blood off the floor, and then I'm waiting. I stay up now for the cycle to be done so I could put it in the dryer and have it all back on the floor. No questions asked, no problems. So I take it out of the washing machine. I'm not even, it looks clean. I'm not paying attention. Put it in the dryer. The next morning I wake up, they had all melded colors because I washed it with hot water.
Like
So the,
tie dye.
so the, so the it was like, yeah, like it was like tie dyed. The white became like a mint green. There was like red leaked in all of them. And some of them shrank to like a smaller percentage of the size originally because they were never supposed to be dried. And I'm like, oh shit. So I just put them back, like, exactly where they were. Like, no one's going to notice. And my mom comes downstairs. She's like, what the fuck happened to the floor mats? And she's not mad. Like, these aren't like expensive, but she's just like,
Sure,
something
no.
happened down here last night. And I want to understand what's happening. And at the time, I'm getting like, bigger and bigger, like week over week. And I'm like, yeah, I got a really bad nosebleed. And it was just pouring blood everywhere. And she's like, got a nosebleed. And I'm like, yeah, yeah. She's like, in bed. I'm like, yeah. She's like, why is there no blood on the finished side of the basement? I wonder. And I'm like, well, I was able to hold it. And then when I got back, and I realized I was just like digging a hole, and she
Yeah.
was being kind enough to not ask any more questions. And I was like, I'll replace him if you want me to. She's like, yeah, you're going to replace him. But, totally valid to be nervous about something like that. You know what I mean? Just like,
So you never had to fess up? You never had to tell her like what really
dude,
happened?
she wasn't stupid, bro. Like,
Yeah.
especially, uh, maybe not at that point in time, but around the time that I first met you, I was probably off of jujitsu for like a year. And I had said this
Okay.
before, like I was really lean. Okay. I was like a lean 212, 215. I had a really clean diet and I was doing so much cardio. Once I removed the cardio, okay, I exploded. My body, like absolutely 1000% completely exploded, like next level. So the point of where like, week over week, I was just getting bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And my mom was just like, something's going on here. And at the time, I didn't have a good relationship with like a lot of my family. I was, I had some issues with my dad, and some of my mom's side of the family didn't fully understand that, and they were kind of mad at me. And I hadn't seen a lot of them. And I remember I ran into my cousin at a Trader Joe's, hadn't seen her for like a year and a half. In that interim, I'd shaved all the hair off my head. I was like 260 pounds. And the way she describes it, I had a fucking a cart filled with that Trader Joe's orange chicken. because each bag was like 180 grams of protein and like 2,000 calories, whatever. So that was like my go-to like shitty bulking food. And she claimed I said to her, "Hey, Cheryl, I'll fucking kill you," like as a joke, but she didn't recognize me. And she was like, "Oh my God, like who is this person?" And then when she left, she like called her mom. She's like, "Eric's on steroids. This just makes no sense. Like, this is
Very apparent,
not the same
massive all of
person."
a
Like,
sudden,
and
you're
you're
just a
so stupid.
freakazoid.
Like, you think like no one knows. Like, yeah, I'll wear some loose fitting shirts. It's like, dude, you're so jacked. Like, relative to your old self. Like, what are you talking about? Like, your mom's not going to see you with your shirt off, like going to the beach. Like, you look like a different person. Like, it's not a thing. It's impossible.
Which is what I always wanted. I always wanted to be that freakishly jacked when I was young. I was like, that's why I was so tempted. So, I just had this interest to go on, but I just couldn't pull the trigger. I'm
Dude,
happy I didn't, but I couldn't pull the trigger.
you made the right
I'll live
call. I mean,
vicariously through your stories.
I got
I'll live
nothing
vicariously through
extra
all
out
of
of it.
your.
Like nothing.
Yeah.
Like, we have the same accolades. Maybe
You have some
I
good
probably have
stories,
less
though.
than you. So it
Yes.
doesn't matter. But yeah, dude, I mean, it was like, you're like trying to order gear, and you're like talking to like a guy from Romania, and like you just wire him money and hope he doesn't steal it. And then
That's
like a
wild.
package gets shipped to your house, and it's like, this happened to me. Like, a package gets shipped and you're like, man, like, you open it up and there's just dolls, like Pinocchio dolls. This fucking guy, like, he trolled me. Like, I wired him money for like the whole crew of guys. And then you throw the doll down in anger and you hear a noise, and you cut the head off the doll and dump it out. And he stuffed the dolls full of gear,
Damn.
full, just dumping out a Pinocchio doll like on your bed. And you're like, what the fuck? Like,
Did you often get ripped off? Was being ripped off like 50-50? Or was it like,
I don't think I ever got ripped off, like, in terms of like not getting stuff. I think the quality was questionable,
mm,
for sure. I know a couple times that the stuff I got was fake. There's no doubt
got
about it,
it.
because I had taken the real stuff, and unfortunately, a lot of times that happened before meets, because like, you're in the off season, you're just taking testosterone, like a low dose, like a TRT dose. And then 10 or 12 weeks out, you'd bump up the testosterone, and then you'd add in either shorter acting injectables or orals, about, you know, depending on the compound, 8 to 4 weeks out of the meet. And so, like, you're not taking Anadrol all year long. Why would you?
Fair
You're
enough.
taking it just before the meet. So, like, yeah, there were definitely times that it affected my total, where like I got Anadrol and it was fake, but like I wasn't popping it all year long, so I had no way of knowing. Right? You take it, you're like, oh shit! Like now, like, it actually messes with you, because you're like, well, the last meet that I did this compound, like these milligrams. So you're trying to get back to that baseline. And now you're either trying to take more of something else, which puts you over the side effect hub, which I was already
Okay.
over. So now I'm just way over the side effect hub. Okay. And yeah, so that it definitely happened. Then unfortunately for most people, you're only increasing drugs around competition time. So like that's the time you can least afford to fuck up, and then you fuck up. Right. So it is what it is, dude. I mean, I
Yeah.
don't miss the stress of that. It sucks. Now I just go to the doctor. I mean, you know what I mean? Like, I'm done with this. But I did promise the audience earlier on a discussion of Hollywood physique. All
All
right.
right.
That's a reasonable thing to shoot for if you still want to be healthy but still want to like impress people. Bro, Charles Bronson from Death Wish.
I'm gonna look it up. Charles Bronson from Death Wish.
Shredded, dude.
And you think it's drug free? So
It's
it's
the
like a normal
70s.
person could. Well, that was when Arnold was in his heyday. He could have been talking to Arnold now. Let me see.
Look it up. Charles Bronson physique.
Yeah, that seems like it's pretty reasonable. He's not overly muscled. He just has the muscle in the right areas. He's got
He's just lean as hell. Okay. Bronson was like I believe he was a paratrooper during World War II. So we're talking about like a real, like, serious, like, old school fit dude.
All
phenomenal
right, here.
paint-on mustache. I mean, that thing is, like, practically penciled on. I mean, like, that is some of the best mustache maintenance you'll ever see, okay? Incredible.
Let's see. Let me see if I can. Here we go. All right, check it out. So he talking about right here.
Yeah. Good physique, dude.
Yeah, I mean, it's like a like the guy you see at the gym who like smokes cigarettes constantly, but who's just really muscular, and he just does like biceps and delts all the time. You know what I'm saying? Like that's what he reminds me of. Like
It's
the
just
guy you don't really want to talk to, but he'll talk to you for longer than you want him to talk to you.
dude,
Like that's it.
for his era, that's a
Spray
damn good
tans.
physique, bro.
Hell yeah. Hell yeah.
For his era, bro,
Now,
like 60s, 70s into early 80s, like that might have been that could have been the best physique in Hollywood. That's pre-Schwarzenegger, and Stallone was not shredded in the first 2 Rocky movies, bro.
he's kind of doughy, not
Yeah.
doughy, but like he was kind of like average, normal, and muscular. Big arms. I think big arms sets you apart. Like if he's got really pretty big arms here and delts and good delt definition. Like nothing else is really spectacular. Like his chest is not really that developed. Traps are not. It's
I
really
think
just
the key,
here.
dude.
And that what draws the attention, I feel like.
Yes. I think the key to having a good physique without having to be too heavy, I unfortunately, legs, like, don't matter to most people. And I have great genetics for legs, so this just sucks. I'm just tortured by
I
it at this point,
know.
you
I
know?
know.
But, like, I think forearms, lats and upper back, and delts. Those things all make
Forearms,
you
lats, upper back, and
look
delts.
bigger
Yeah.
than you actually are, right?
Traps.
Like,
I think traps.
for
My
sure.
my cousin has a an argument. So when you get traps and the angle on your shoulder starts to tilt up to, and you get that bridge look, which I love, and I think that's just like the epitome of being jacked is massive traps. He says visually it narrows your shoulders. It looks like your shoulders are more narrow
I agree.
as opposed to if you had just big delts and less traps, you'd look wider, like more
Mhm.
boxy.
I agree.
But fuck that. I want traps. Like
Listen,
I
there's
want
no
when
wrong
you're
answer here.
behind me, like if I'm walking and you're behind me, I want you to see like the mountain range of traps. I'm not trying to, I don't know. I just feel like
I'm done with that, and it's just because
really,
I
oh,
do think it gives me sleep apnea.
that's horseshit.
For sure,
Your
dude.
traps on your back?
A
How, are
big
you
a
sleeping on
big
your
neck,
face?
but you get a neck with it is my point. Like,
Eh,
dude,
if you're lean enough, I think you'd be all right.
when I was, like, really big, my neck was over 20 inches, and I was just tired all the time. And I remember traveling, to go to a competition, and our buddy Dom was like, "Dude, you're the worst snorer I ever heard. I thought you were gonna die in the middle of the night." And at the time, I wasn't, like, living with anyone. I had no one to bounce this off of. I just thought, "I'm
Fair.
getting old. I'm 28." You know what I mean? I guess I'm just slowing down, you know what I mean? And and the reality was I used to leave a harness loaded with like 75 or 100 pounds next to my bed, and I wasn't allowed to go to bed until I did 100 reps a night.
Of like what the
Yeah, the
extensions?
extension. So imagine you're like,
Jesus
you
Christ.
like you bring a girl over your house, like your wife comes over for the first time, and you go into your bedroom and she's like, "What the fuck is that next to your bed?" Like you have
Like
no idea what that is. Like that's not a
some
common.
sick sex
No one
toy.
sees
Yeah.
that in a gym. Like, what is wrong with you? Gotta do 100 a night, sweetie. Like, to the point of where you can't even turn your neck. You have to like roll on your shoulder to even face her, and then come back over. Like that was every night. I'd put the thing on my head and I would just do like 4 sets of 25 or something like that, and
Damn.
then take it off. And I was obsessed with it because I felt like you. I was like, dude, when you see I have a big neck and traps, like I want the fear. I want to see the fear in your
Yeah.
fucking eyes. Like that,
Like a
it meant
bulldog.
everything to me. But I do think it gave me sleep apnea. Now, maybe again, I think I could maybe put some neck girth back on and not gain too much weight, stay lean. It would probably be helpful. But for sure, like, dude, I shared a bed with Donnie Thompson in Connecticut one night. Okay. I drove him to Connecticut because he was getting inducted into like the Hall of Fame for like Powerhouse Gym or something. Right. And I remember driving there with Donnie. He first of all, he called me the day before and he was like, "Eric, I need you to drive me to Greenwich, Connecticut," or whatever it was. Yeah,
Greenwich?
it might have been even further. I
Greenwich.
don't remember, but he said something crazy. I pick him up at LaGuardia Airport, and he doesn't know anything about the airport. So he's like, "All right, what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna make it real easy for you to find me." He just took his luggage and just basically sat on like the divider of the highway. I don't even know how he got there. And he's
Where's
like
he from?
350 pounds. Yeah.
Where's he from?
He's from South Carolina. He's, like just a nice, it's
It's
just a
like
crazy.
Crocodile Dundee. It's
Yeah.
like Crocodile when
Yes.
you bring somebody like that who's just
Yes.
from the wilderness into
Exactly.
a
I pick him up, and I had just come from like a seminar that I had been staying with like a group of dudes for like a few days. And I'm like, I got to go home and go to bed. Like, I'm exhausted. And as I'm driving up, it's like summer. So they're doing all this road work on I-95. So the other way back, I'm driving past the like WWE headquarters in Stamford, Connecticut, and like I'm realizing it's all the lanes are closed. It's going to take me 6 hours to get home. I'm going to fall asleep in my car. I'm going to die. Like there's no way I'm going to make it home. So Donnie sees me stressing out. He's like, Eric, don't worry about it, man. They got me a hotel. You sleep with me. So I get into his hotel room, and there's just one like full size bed. I'm 260.
for two
He's
massive
like
men.
350, 370. Okay. And he's like, all right, what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna put some pillows up in the middle. No one crosses this divider. I'm like, that's impossible. Like, we're already touching each other. This is ridiculous. Like, and so, I slept in the bed with Donnie Thompson. And I remember he had a CPAP, like he had sleep apnea, like he had the whole setup, put it on. And the next morning, we woke up, he's like, Eric, man, you got problems. You got to do something about that sleep apnea. Like he said it to me, sleeping next
I
to
mean,
me.
he would know best.
Yeah,
He
I mean, it
probably
was
had
like,
it diagnosed and
I was
accepted
like,
it and
oh
got
man, I
the
got to make some
machine.
changes. And as a brief aside, we both annihilated that toilet bowl, like, and then fled the scene of the crime. Annihilated. Like, there's no,
Upper decker? Did you leave an upper decker
no,
in there?
I'm not that much of a barbarian. Okay, I would only do that. I would only do that in like, well, theoretically, I would only do that in perhaps a place that I used to work that I didn't like the owner very much. We'll leave it at that.
Sure,
But
sure. There you
never
go.
in a hotel. Like you feel bad for the maid. They're going to come in. It's just
Yeah,
it's
that's
a
not
terrible
the
situation.
CEO's not coming in to do that, clean that up. It's like,
Yeah,
exactly.
it's
Somebody who didn't deserve it.
exactly. The next time we're
Yeah.
here, I'll tell you about the story with the cement and the porta potty. We'll leave that for
Oh, okay. Yeah,
the
that's a
next
good
time.
one.
But
That's
yeah,
a good
dude,
one.
I think at the end of the day, I just kind of try to bring this all. This has been a wild podcast. Is like if you're not training to compete in something, or you're not like empirically obsessed with results, like you said, you have to enjoy the journey.
Yeah,
That's
agreed.
what it comes down to. Now,
Yeah,
if you do things that you like and you don't get where you want to go because you're not willing to do what is necessary, don't complain.
just to be expected.
Yeah, right,
To be
right.
expected.
Like
Yeah,
I've seen plenty of guys that would do really benefit from a lot of drilling or positional training in jujitsu, and they don't want to do it. Some of them understand that. Others will complain, wow, I'm getting crushed. Well, guess what? You got to work on your guard. You refuse to do it. Okay.
yeah,
Sorry. Okay.
yeah.
But the most important thing about training is, do you enjoy it enough to do it for the rest of your life? Okay. And that may change. Like, again, I was very open about my personal kind of discovery here. Like, I loved heavy lifting. Okay. I didn't necessarily understand all of the things I loved about it until it was taken away from me.
Wow.
The
Yeah.
team, the crew, all that stuff. And I stuck with it. I still did it. I was unhappy. And even though I miss being jacked, and that's always the conversation in my head, I do ultimately feel compelled to do more conditioning now, not just for health, but because it seems to fit my personality better now. And like you said, it's always a moving target. A program you did 10 years ago might not work now. Program you did a
Sure.
year ago might not work now. Okay. The drugs you did a year ago, they might not work now. Your body and your brain are a moving target. Okay. And it has
Very
to
true.
fit where you're at now, not where you're going to be next year, and not where you were at 5 years ago. Period.
I couldn't agree more. And yeah, I think I will never, maybe not never. I shouldn't say that, but I just cannot get through the monotony of like cardio, long distance cardio like that to get to the point where I enjoy it. Just can't get to it. I like being focused on a task and like the technique and focusing on my technique and position in training, lifting. That keeps me engaged.
Yeah.
That's what keeps my mind occupied. In between, I miss the camaraderie, I miss all that, but the music is fine or podcast is fine. But I just can't. I have to find a place mentally that I can go to eventually get better at long distance cardio or true conditioning like that. Just
There's
can't
two
find
ways you
it.
could
Where do you
do it.
go? Where do
There's
you
two ways
go
you
in
could
your
do it. The
mind?
first is
Yeah,
most of your aerobic base is built through very easy conditioning. for long
Okay.
periods of time. I had to learn to not view it like training. Like,
Hmm.
I'm watching a television show. I'm I'm doing something, I'm going somewhere else with it, right?
Got it.
I'm listening to a podcast. Let's say like I love the X-Files, right? I used to love the X-Files when I was a kid. I all summer I was watching an episode of the X-Files while doing cardio. 45 minutes an
Okay.
episode, we're good to go, okay? And you just once you get the habit of like how the heart rate's supposed to feel, you barely have to check your heart rate monitor and you just go, okay? I do think there is a certain adrenaline component to hard conditioning that I think a lot of lifters would feel pretty good doing. Like it's similar in a way of like
Hmm.
something's telling you to quit and you go, 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 go. Like that was always the easiest thing for me to develop a mentality to. Because I kind of reminded it of like high rep squats. Like we're just sending it and we're just going, going,
Yeah.
no matter what, just do another one, do another one. I think that's the easiest thing to get to
Hmm.
from lifting. I think learning to be able to go somewhere else and view the easy cardio as downtime.
Okay.
That
Just like,
that
but
if you
fill the
view it like
void
it's
with something
hard training,
distracting.
you'll wanna kill yourself because
Got it.
you can't just be mentally active for 45 minutes. Like, I'm basically turning my brain off, and I'm watching something that I've always wanted to watch, and I guess that's the other thing too. You have to think of, like, when you're coaching clients, doing a podcast, editing videos, these are not necessarily tasks that you could have something on in the background. Like, I don't consume
Sure.
that much media that I actually pay attention to, right? So there are lists of things that I really want to watch or
Yeah.
listen to, and I set aside that time for that.
Okay. That's fair.
You know what I
Really
mean? So
smart. Really
that would
smart
be
way to
my
do it,
suggestion. And
honestly.
and and again, like the hard cardio, I think it's different. Like I've been running 400-meter intervals. Like that's hard. There's some suffering there, and so like there is an effort of like keep going, effort in trying to relax yourself between intervals and get all that stuff down. And truthfully, I think honestly, dude, if I were you, knowing how you think, I think one of the things that would make you like it a little bit more is if you picked a more technical form of cardiovascular exercise, like running, biking, or swimming, where you're dialed in on the technique and it
Fair
maybe
enough.
takes some of the mental frenzy in your head, like you're mastering something because there is technique to running or swimming or biking, and as opposed to just like an elliptical or a stairmaster where the machine determines it for you, right? And it's
Sure.
just like boof, 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 boof. I think if you were doing something like that, you'd probably have your mind a little more occupied, just enough because you're dialing in a skill. You know what I mean?
That's a great point. I think swimming has always fascinated me, but like now that I live in Florida, I live in a community where they have a clubhouse with an indoor pool. So all the other factors in New York that were limiting me from swimming are now gone.
Yeah,
So I just have to get there and do it. I do want to take lessons with a swim coach to like, because the technique does fascinate me. All the different
yeah,
body positions of the technique to become efficient and become really, technical. So yeah, it's a great idea. Thank you,
yeah.
Coach Eric.
I
Thank
think
you
if
very
you
much.
learn to swim in a way that you could do it for exercise, that's something I wish that I could do. Again, if I had a community with a pool, I would do it because it's so low impact. You could swim forever.
That's,
Dude, you're gonna get some pretty good localized muscle development from that shit, dude. Like
yeah,
you're gonna have some pretty savage rear delts, bro. Like
yeah,
there's no way you could replace that volume of overhead work with lifting. It's
no,
impossible. Like you
yep,
will have phenomenal shoulders and upper back from swimming. Like, and from my perspective of grappling, there's almost nothing better for localized muscle endurance to the sport. Like most conditioning involves lower body dominance because that's what gets your heart rate up. Okay.
yeah,
Which means that, yeah, my legs are getting better endurance, but my arms or upper back are not getting as much localized muscle endurance. Where swimming, you'll get it, dude. You know what I mean? So I think it's a good choice, dude. I think go learn the strokes, figure out what stroke you like to do the best. But I'm telling you, when I trained, I did swimming for conditioning for like only a couple years. Like I would just go and push myself. It is hard work, man.
it's really hard.
Oof.
Yeah.
Dude, it is hard work. Hard
Yeah,
work.
I was seeing stars. I tried it for the first time when I came down to Florida. I tried it and I went like, almost like sprint swimming where I would sprint as fast as I could to one end and I'd rest a little, then go back. After like 5, 10 rounds, I was dizzy seeing stars.
It's
I
a
was like, holy,
torturous
I gotta get
pump.
out of the pool.
You get a
Yeah.
pump from it that is torturous, and
Yeah.
it gives you a lot of respect for what these guys put themselves through to be able to swim multiple races in a day. You're a freak of nature. Freak of nature,
Yes.
dude.
Yeah.
Freak of nature. All right. We could talk forever, but we can't. It's
Yes,
time for
sir.
us to go. Iron Road friends, take it easy. Ian, you're the man. That is all.